All right, well, let's jump in. Hey, I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder of Safeopedia. Super excited to have Alison Hemmings with us today. Um, Alison is a career coach extraordinaire, helping people find their dream job and make sure they don't leave any money on the table in the process, right?
Right, yes.
If you are familiar with Safety Connect, Alison was one of the presenters were our very first Safety Connect in 2020, I believe.
That's right.
And she was on the career panel, and she had such great advice, words of wisdom and encouragement for safety professionals that I always been looking for a chance to have you back. And super excited to have you back. As we mentioned, with our Safeonomics podcast last year, we focused a little bit on trying to help safety professionals talk the language of the business, understand ROI or total cost of ownership, those sorts of things. And this year we thought, what better focus than to focus on the individual, building up that skill set, trying to navigate your career path and the organizational landscape or opportunities that might be out there. And so again, what better way to kick it off with than with Alison, the career coach extraordinaire. So I'll give you a second maybe to introduce or create a little bit of a background that I may have missed.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to be able to be on this podcast. So yeah, you're right. I'm a career coach extraordinaire. Basically, I help professionals boost their income by helping them provide clarity to make more money and to live a purpose-driven life. So that's what I do. I actually had a recruitment agency for 12 years. So that's where I cut my teeth in this business, working, helping individuals in manufacturing in the automotive world and senior level executives and engineers for over 12 years. So I interviewed thousands of candidates over my time. And what I found is that people just really didn't understand how to navigate their job search. I mean, when you go to school, there's not a course you learn about algebra, about finite, about crazy things that you're never ever going to use in your profession, but nobody ever teaches you how to interview for a job, how to, do research about an industry, how to make more money, how to do a resume, how to interview or negotiate your salary. And during my time as a recruiter, it didn't matter who I was interviewing you. I promise you, it could be a student, it could be a CEO. Nobody knew what they were doing. And so I decided to actually open my practice, the Happy Work Project, which leads me to you here today. So.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. And I think you were helping with recruiting at the time, Safety Connect 2020. And in our conversations, you said you've switched to the career coaching because helping people find their dream job is much more fulfilling.
You know what? It's so true because you can do. I mean, listen, recruitment is very lucrative. If you have a recruitment agency, you have lots of clients, you're going to make a lot of money. That's just how it is, right? But what I found is that I just had more fulfillment helping the candidate that I ever had helping the company find the person. And I just found that I would see these candidates that had so much to bring to the table, and just because they weren't great at mastering the interviewing skill, or they would freeze in an interview, that the employer would look past them. And I'm like, but that's the person for the job. Like, you're just, and so it just became like my baby to be able to help people be able to bring their full self to the table. And so I started doing that slowly. I took on a couple of private clients and well, I always would interview people or prep people for any interview that I had. So in my recruitment practice, if you were going to meet with any of my clients, you're going to meet with me first. So if any of my recruiters on my team. So, with that practice, I just got really good at being able to help people in interviewing prep. So yeah, that's what brought me here.
Yeah, great. So just like, what we've heard, and the sentiment is changing a little bit. I think COVID actually helped maybe highlight the importance of the role of the safety professional within an organization.
Mhm.
And in conversations, it does sound like there's a little bit more support, there's a little bit more understanding for the role and the importance of the safety professional within your organization. But a lot of times we're still hearing people say, I feel undervalued or overworked or underappreciated, or I have all these expectations in my role, but I don't necessarily have the authority to execute on everything because, again, safety, has to work with operations and
Mhm.
management. So before somebody starts searching for their new dream job, how do you have some advice for people to maybe look at how they could create their own dream job within the organization they're already working with?
Yeah, I mean that's a really great question. I always like to use analogies to kind of just look at different ways of looking at situations, right? So when you look at yourself as an employee within the company, you're always going to look at what kind of value that you're going to bring to the table. Value bring, anything that you do that's going to help productivity, streamline the process, make the company more money, instill in value, culture values that help either in the future or help create different protocols that are going to help in the future, right? So the way that you bring value is by looking at the results that you can bring to the table, right? You got to be able to know what you've be able to bring to the table. Now, when you're a safety professional, we understand that safety is part of the culture as well, right? So sometimes you can't always make every single change, but you can also develop the culture within. You can hold yourself accountable for the safety that's within the organization. So if there's like a policy that you don't believe in, or a policy that you do believe in, you can be able to influence the company by having those having the right morals and the right um, sorry, I just kind of lost my my thought process here. What I'm trying to say is when you when you're a safety professional and you want to be able to carry the culture throughout the organization, a lot of that's going to come with how you carry yourself and the value that you bring to the table as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then from a advocacy perspective, do you provide any sort of tips or suggestions for people to advocate for themselves? Like, do you go to your manager or your director and have this conversation that have bigger aspirations and kind of plan that out, or how do you advise clients to deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that you want to do is listen, nobody sits at their desk all day and thinks about how awesome they are. It's completely counterintuitive, right? So you want to be able to look at some of the career stories that you have and some of the things that have happened to you that's going to help you, show that you bring value to the table, right? So you want to use the start technique to be able to show some of the results that you've had in the workplace. So you want to look at situations, right? Where you've had, there's been safety issues or a time where you've been able to improve a situation or help them make more money or be able to bring something to the table, right? So you look at situations that happen in your career and go from there. And then you want to make sure that you have actions and results that you're talking about during that process as well.
That's great. And then when we've talked a little bit too about influencing, right? Being an influencer. I think when we spoke with Abby very last year, and she said, one of the best things she ever did when she wanted to have a little bit more influence within the organization was just go around and ask questions in the different departments
Mhm.
and try to gain an appreciation for what others need to do within the organization and just build some connections, camaraderie by being curious and kind of exploring other areas. do you again see that helping out?
Yeah, for sure. You want to build advocacy within the organization as well, right? So build people who are going to be part of the mission that you want to bring in. So if you're trying to build a safety culture, you want to bring on allies within the organization that are going to be with you. So for sure, asking questions, success leaves clues as well, right? So being able to get someone's buy-in, see how it affects them is also going to be a great way to be able to share and spread the culture within the organization. Because people always are naturally going to think about what is in it for them, right? So when you're able to be able to say, when you adapt this concept, this is going to help your department grow, your people grow. This can help this department save more money, less time off, more systems that are going to help improve people's well-beings and so forth, and how that affects the organization. So yes, of course, you always want to be asking questions and coming from a solution-based place.
Right. And a lot of the questions we see in the safety community is, should I get that designation? Do I need to get that certification? You know, will that help me advance my career? A lot of times, certainly for people in safety that are my generation, they didn't necessarily start out in safety. They didn't necessarily go to university or college for
Mhm.
environmental health and safety. They sort of fell into it. You know, a lot of people
Right?
got voluntold.
Yeah.
Other people saw it as an opportunity to get out of the field and into the office. But again, a lot of questions come up about, you know, do I need, you know, to pursue that dream job or get to that level within my career? Should I be looking at more formalized certifications, education?
You know, I mean, that's a really great question. Success always leaves clues, so it's always great to look at people who are in a role that you admire or that you aspire to get into, and look and see and find out, what did you do to get that path? How did you get there? Speak to people who are industry leaders and see what paths that they've taken, right? You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. You know, I always like to use this analogy about real estate is, if you were to put your house up for sale right now, right? If you bought a house 20 years ago, you wouldn't use the same structure that you've learned 20 years ago and just put your house up
Right.
willy-nilly. Like houses, I'm in Toronto, a basic house in Toronto is $1 million. 20 years ago, $250,000, you could buy a great house. So using that same kind of mentality, if you were to put yourself up for on the job market or for a promotion, what would be some of the things that you would do even before you would go out and approach a supervisor or approach a job search, right? So you would look at what is the industry doing, right? What's the future? What are some of the comps? Like if you're putting your house up for sale, like you're
Right.
not like, oh, okay, with $250,000, let me just add 10%, right? You're gonna look at what the industry is doing. Look at Glassdoor, do your research. You may want to invest in a pro. You want to get into that understanding of what you actually bring to the table as a candidate. That's something that's really important. You know, if you're somebody in safety that is really great at creating a culture, and it's a gift that you're able to notice, okay, if I can implement this system, we will save thousands of dollars, or you know, whatever it is that you bring to the table, and you can understand that and articulate it like the comps that you would do for your house when you put it up for your sale. If you do that with your own career, you'll be able to articulate the value that you bring, and you'll have way more return as opposed to just hoping that it can happen, right? So
Right.
that research, so always thinking about, okay, if I was a house, right,
Yeah.
what would I do? So I'm going to go speak to my client, my boss. What would they be looking for? Understanding what's going to be important,
Right.
right? That's going to be the key. When you understand what the objective is within the organization, then you can be able to show how the solution, you as the employee, is able to solve that in an articulate way that's going to be able to demonstrate your value.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, you know, going back to what you said earlier about nobody necessarily goes through proper training, you know,
Hmm.
to find a job or get a promotion, you know, or navigate an interview. And a lot of times those, you know, we don't want to talk about money. The house
Right.
example, you know, when you're hanging out with your friends, you know, nobody wants to talk about how big their mortgage is or small their mortgage, you know, it's sort of
Hmm.
a social taboo a little bit, right? So
Right.
I think it's important for people to realize, and I went years ago, I went through some sales training, and some of the best advice was if you're feeling it or you're thinking it, the other person probably is as well, right? So if you're thinking about advancement within your organization, or if you're wondering what you need to do next, not, you know, sometimes there is definitely open and honest dialogue, but a lot of times um, it's difficult to have those conversations
It
with your
is.
boss or your senior manager. And I would just encourage people to know that if you're feeling it, you know, they probably are too. And the hardest thing is to kind of break that ice
Hmm.
and start
Right.
that conversation.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, you know, bringing in, like, if you have comps, right, for from a house, like if you know your $250,000 house is now worth 500,000, and you can
Hmm.
clearly see that, and you can put that on the table, then there isn't as much of a difficulty talking about why your house is worth $500,000 now, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I think the takeaway, if I'm hearing it properly, is do a little bit of homework. You know, go to your manager or supervisor and have some of that prepared, and that'll just make the conversation that much easier to say, hey, look, I see, you know, other people in similar organizations, you know, making a little bit more money than me. Do I need to get a certification? Do I need to take on more responsibility? And
Hmm.
having that as the icebreaker rather than just going, nobody wants to go in and just ask for more money or ask for a promotion, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's the other key about is just was you know, keeping these career stories and journaling the successes that you have while you're at work is also key as well, because then you have them top of mind. If you know that you've saved a lot of money, or you help them simplify a task
Right.
or eliminate or whatever it is, whatever KPI that's going to really drive the business to move forward, then you need to be able to have that, because then there's it's not a question as like, oh, do I deserve this raise? It's like, this is why I deserve
Yeah.
the raise, right? This is what I'm seeing. So now you're aligning out your results with the goals of the organization. And so that's really key. And it's also counterintuitive. We're just not taught to be thinking about that stuff at work. But when you really think about when your mindset is coming from a place of looking for results and achievements and noting that, then it will start coming easier and easier as you progress in your career.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's um I'll come back to that in a second maybe, but I think it's also important for uh, employees to know that for an organization to replace you, it's very, very expensive, right? So
Mhm.
you know, not suggesting you use it as a threat,
Yeah,
but just to understand that most organizations will be much more motivated to retain you and keep you than for you to be you know, maybe dissatisfied with your job and looking for other opportunities.
exactly. People want you to stay in the organization. That's the key, right? Especially now, where, you know, especially when it comes to safety. I think when you have a high turnover rate when it comes to safety within an organization, that also really affects the perception of how other employees look at the company as well. And that
Right.
might be a statistic that maybe you don't think about, but when you're in HR, you start thinking about that. Like, wait a second, now we're trying to recruit other people and we can't keep people in our safety department. What's going on here? And what that signifies to the other employees. So yes, it's definitely important to be able to keep your team retained, especially when in that area, right? Like that would be
Yeah.
something I'd be looking at like, oh, wait a minute, every 6 months, like, do these people even care about us? You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what the numbers are these days, but I do remember, talk of like $20,000, $30,000, to replace an employee from recruitment and training
Yeah,
and
minimum. Like a bad
yeah,
hire is about $15,000 to $20,000. It's a very high cost of not hiring the right person at the right place at the right time. It can really affect your bottom line as a business and have lasting effects. And so when you have really great employees, so if you're doing all those tasks and you're hitting all of those KPIs and really adding value, you're actually doing the company a disservice by not articulating it as well. That's the
right.
other thing. That's when that
Yeah,
that shift happens, right? Like, if you think of yourself as somebody who brings value, and you're noting that, you're journaling it, you're looking for it, you're looking for the objectives of the company, and you're aligned with that, then it's going to get easier and easier for you to demonstrate it. And that could be the deciding factor of what makes you a very successful person and in charge of your career, as opposed to somebody who just kind of coasts and it doesn't happen. So it really is your God's given purpose to be able to articulate what you bring to the table. You are in control of your own career. Nobody's waiting. No, and again, nope. As
yeah,
much as I'm not bragging, nobody's sitting there waiting to give you a raise. I mean, as a career coach, I've talked to thousands of people who have, left organizations because they haven't been offered a promotion or a raise, or looked past for positions within the organization that they might have gotten if they just simply put their hand up, if
right,
they just let it be known, right? If
right.
they articulated those results or those projects. So, courage is a muscle. It does take a lot of courage to be able to do that. But and especially when you're in the beginning of your career, if you get yourself in this practice that you're doing this all the time, and even regardless of if you're in a job search, or you're in the beginning of your career, if you're in your mid-career, or if you're about to retire, it's a great practice to have throughout, so that you're always aware of the value that you bring to the table, always.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fantastic advice, obviously, and I think that the mindset too, right? It's like the worst they can say is no. But if you go in with it, you're not demanding it, you're like, what do I need to do to get there?
Mhm.
Then I think that's a very, very different conversation.
Yeah, for sure. It really is. And again, it really does start with how uh, what you think of yourself. If you're going in thinking, "Oh, I don't know, if I met last year's numbers, or didn't really participate fully, or you have this apprehensive, clarity is key, and it's going to be the king in any kind of salary negotiations, any kind of career conversation that you're going to have, right? You're going to have to be able to articulate it, because they're not always looking, and
Right.
right. So yeah, you have to be the hype person for your career. It's very, very important.
Yeah, and I was going to mention earlier that there might be some folks listening in that work for larger organizations, and a lot of this is really well documented within that organization. There's annual reviews or quarterly reviews, and performance targets and those sorts of things. But
Mhm.
a lot of times, and personal experience working for small, medium-sized organizations, they're not reviewing their compensation packages on an annual basis.
Oh.
They're kind of holding their breath a little bit sometimes, bringing people on, and not necessarily having that career path laid out, right? It's
Mhm.
it's a little bit more uh, uh, kind of go with the flow, and see what happens. And I think that if you are in one of those larger organizations, well, it's really well documented, then you probably have a clear understanding of what you need to do to get that promotion. You do need to speak up, like you're saying.
Right.
But I think a lot of times I'll say, medium-sized organizations, they're not looking for opportunities to increase their expenses, right? So,
Mhm. Exactly. But sometimes they don't even realize as well, right? Like,
right.
how
Yeah.
have you I mean, I remember even with my own small business, I've been a small business owner for, the last 12 years. And I remember having a great assistant who still works with me today. And she just happened to see an area in our business that we were overlooking. And I never would have seen it even to this day, that when it was like 10 years ago, didn't even see it. She pointed it out. I saw the value in it because she spoke to me from a strategic way, right? Like she talked about the KPIs and what it can bring. And I was like, oh, okay, let's do it. And we're still doing it to this day. And that's just a small little example of how when if you're forthright and you're bringing stuff to the table all the time, then you can also affect those changes as well. I mean, it was a little, this 2% changes, 2 millimeter changes, right? That just come
Right.
in and you look at it from a different direction. And now 10 years later, we're still doing it. It's still a major, and we're a small business, right? So imagine the impact that you can have as well,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure, like, I mean, she can brag about that to this day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I always pull that one out.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's awesome. So last year we interviewed. It was interesting because it was back-to-back interviews. So we interviewed Josh Russell, and then we interviewed Sabina Colligan, and Josh kind of talked about he talked about his experience, right? And he said he would kind of apply for these jobs knowing that if he got the job, then he'd figure it out when he got there. And
Hmm.
and Sabina was like, well, I never felt qualified, so she became an industrial hygienist, and like she got as much academic credentials as she could before she had the confidence to apply for a job. And I remember talking to my wife who's in human resources, and she said, yeah, that the men often will have the confidence to apply for a job they're not qualified for,
Hmm.
and women have a tendency to feel underqualified and not want to apply for that
Yeah,
job.
and that is very true. I don't know. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, job descriptions are fancy wish lists for companies. Half the time, job description, like when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, they don't even really know what they're looking for. Like, how many times I've worked with companies and I've been digging deep into, let's really understand what you're looking for this person to do. And then we look at the job description and it has nothing on this job description. And you're like, you've been looking for this person for 6 months and it's not what you have described. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
when it comes to applying, women, like, go ahead and apply. If you fit 50%, go ahead and apply. Trust me that male counterparts, they do not have the same hesitation. Because yeah, you're gonna learn on the spot. You're
right.
gonna learn through osmosis. You're gonna learn while you're there. Projects and positions change. How many of us have started a job and the objective of the job starts off one way, and as you start moving in that way, you realize now you got to go a different way, and you have that skill set within you, right? So it's a lot of it is you got to have just trust. You got to trust and believe that you're
Yeah,
at the right place, and you'll figure it out. That's that mindset.
yeah,
That's why, if your leaders make quick decisions really quickly and they adapt really quickly. So if you have a leader mindset, a growth mindset, it's like, all right, throw it at me. And if you bring that energy to the interview, like, you know what, I'm not sure, but I would be able to figure it out, and you're a solution-based person, you'll prosper in those roles. So let's go at
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think that it's important, at least from my perspective, to keep in mind that it's the company's job to pick the right person, and you just need to put your name forward. You don't need to think forward and make that decision on behalf of the company and say, I'm not qualified or
Mhm.
I'm overqualified. You need to apply, go through that interview process, and then, like I think you said, they'll pick the best candidate, not necessarily based on the job description, but on the people that they interview and meet.
Yeah. Also, people hire who they like. At the end of the day, that's what's going to come down to.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
can have a job posted and have this fancy wish list in your mind and interview people for months and have this role open and be like, this person has that, da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden, this unicorn of a candidate comes in, don't even know why you brought them in, and something happens, you're talking to them, it's like magic. It's like dating, it's finding a job and dating, very similar. So you can be out there
Yeah,
and you think, okay, this is my wish list. And then all of a sudden this unicorn comes in and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the candidate that I was supposed to hire because, and it's always going to come down to the value that they bring, right?
right.
That they articulate that in the interview and that you like them, like in the process, simple. So qualification. That's why if you look at these lists, if you feel like you can do it, go ahead and apply. Don't even look at all of those because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to numbers from the job seekers. How many are you applying for and getting out there? You practice,
Right.
I said courage is a muscle, networking and so forth. And then, what happens in the interview? It's that synergy that can happen in the interview that you just can't explain. It's like
Right.
falling in love. It
Yeah.
really.
I like that 50% guideline, on the job description because, I had some advice once that, looking at at like a posting
Mhm.
and someone who was a bit of a mentor said like don't get caught up in what they've written down here. Like tell them what you want to tell them, right?
Mhm.
Tell them your story, what value you bring
Mhm.
in the context, generally of
Yeah.
obviously the posting, but don't get too focused in on all of those bullet points, right? Like tell your story.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. In my career coaching program, most of my clients are in HR. So if you think about that, most of the people who don't know how to find a job are in HR, who are the people who are applying for a job. You can see that there's a disconnect. No disrespect to anyone in HR, but it's a different thing being on a different side of the desk. And a
Right,
lot of times when it comes to hiring, you have somebody, a hiring manager, that's not really trained in hiring. They don't
right.
really know. They're looking at a job description from Indeed and they're, oh, it seems like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
all right. And they're cutting and pasting, or they're basing it on what they did maybe 10, 15 years ago, and times have changed.
right,
Two, I mean, my goodness, I remember when I started recruiting, I remember talking to my boss 10 years ago and saying that one day we're going to be interviewing everyone at home. And they laughed at me, thought I was insane. And now it's like I can't even remember the last time I interviewed somebody in person,
yeah,
right? So
right,
things change. And the hiring manager may not necessarily know that. They're just going to know that they have a problem and they need someone who's going to solve that problem. And
right,
so when you understand that, then you're able to have the conversations that's going to shift the conversation, that's going to make you a desirable candidate because now you understand what they're looking for,
yeah,
not based on the stupid wish list that they cut and copied or had chat GPT,
right,
right? For them. And they think, yeah, you think that you may need that. But when you really, really go down deep and you look at what's going to move your organization to the next level, sometimes you can't even really describe that in a job description. That's just the truth of it. You
right.
only know when that person walks in and you're like, all right, there they are, right? So it goes both ways. It's hard for the
Yeah,
candidate that's out there, and it's also hard for the employee. That's why it's important before you even start your path for looking for a job or being promoted or growing to really have these conversations with your soul. Search
right.
your soul and figure out, is this what I want to
Yeah,
do?
and I think that might be some of the best advice, is you can also say no if you get the
Mhm.
offer, right? Like I think
Yeah.
it's got to be that two-way street and I think if you like you say if you ask your soul like whether you connected with the folks in the interview, whether it's going to be inspiring and get you jumping out of bed every morning or if
Mhm.
it's just a little bit more money, or if it's just a little closer to home, or a little bit more flexibility, right? Like
Mhm.
I think you need to put yourself out there and not be afraid of saying no if somebody offers you a job that isn't, you don't feel like is the right one for you.
You don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. You can say no. And yeah, you have to find the stuff that's going to align with what you actually want to do in life. Otherwise, we all know. I mean, there's certain jobs that are out there. Like I always say this, you could pay me $3 million a year and I will never be a good fact checker. I will miss it. It's just gonna happen. Don't bet on me to check that kind of stuff. This is not gonna happen, right?
Right.
$3 million. But like when you really figure out what you want to do with your career and your life, then it comes easy for you. It's like that's if you see me, if you come to my office, you see me with my clients, or I'm interviewing somebody, or you know that this is my life's purpose. This is what I was intended to do. This is what lights me up. Nothing
Right.
makes me more excited when somebody gets paid $20,000 more a year than they were expected. Like it really gets me going. I have cried where people have had jobs. They're not even that excited. They're like, oh, it's great. And I'm there crying because I am so happy that this person had moved into, their zone of genius and really figured out what they bring to the table. And now it's aligned and it's like, it's magic. It's like being a matchmaker. Like I love it. And when you are in that place, you know it too. It lights you up. It makes you feel good and you're excited about going to work. Otherwise, what's the point? Spend
Yeah.
more time at work than doing anything else in life. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like do it with people, do something you like with people you like. That's really what it's.
Yeah. That was some advice I heard as well, was like you spend a 30-year time life at work, a 30-year time obviously with your family and friends, and a third of your time sleeping. So make sure you enjoy the people you work with, make sure you have a comfortable mattress, and
Exactly. And you know what? Life is short. You never know. You
yeah.
don't know how long you have on this earth, right? And you think of all the things that you can be doing instead of spending time with your loved ones. You're at work. So if
Yeah.
you're there, enjoy it and let it bring you some kind of fulfillment. Be able to add value, be able to bring the organization to move forward. Go to work and be excited, or else don't.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of we were talking about, how to maybe get that internal promotion, or shift things internally so you're happy. We kind of moved on to the interview and getting out there. And what kind of advice, like if somebody's, working in a job, they've sort of made up their mind, it's time to move on for whatever reason.
Mhm.
You talked a little about researching industries, researching organizations. Like what should somebody do before, jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak?
Yeah, you know what? I would start making definitely want to start with the soul, right? So before you start, because there is nothing worse than going from one job you don't like to a job that you hate even more. And I've been there, I've seen this happen to people. So don't think the grass isn't always greener. So
Right.
always want to check yourself. Why am I want to make a leave? What's the next steps for me? What are my deal breakers? Like listen, I've been working from home for the better part of 12 years. There is no way that I can go work in an office. It's just not gonna happen. I know myself, you gotta know what are your deal breakers, what are your must-haves, right?
Right.
Understand your values and then go look at what other organizations' problems are and just see if you can solve them.
Right.
Start networking. I think most of us have been trained to think everything is advertised on the internet. Every single job is out there. It's not. In my recruitment firm, 12 years we were in business, I rarely ever posted jobs. I found there to be a nuisance to post the positions because I post them and I get all these applications and I got to go through all of them. It's just easier to headhunt. It just is. Like, so not everything is posted. So I would start networking, looking success leaves clues, looking at people who I used to work with, where they've gone, seeing, what's happening there with those organizations, reaching out to my network, alumni, And then, courage is a muscle, putting yourself out there. It's
Right.
again, it's that house. If you're putting your house up for sale, right? Can't just, okay, I make $100,000 now in this job. So I'm just going to assume I'm going to go to the next company and get 110.
Right.
Maybe the market doesn't warrant that anymore, and it's not a good time for you to leave. Maybe, $100,000 is now the very low end, and you could be making $200,000, right? So that's again, it's going to go with that market and understanding your value. Once you have control over that, you craft your search and get your marketing out there, your resume being key, and your LinkedIn profile and so forth, because online that's where people are going to find you. If you're not on LinkedIn, it's almost like you don't exist anymore. Some more recruiters, and get out there, start talking to people, figuring out. But the key is going to be really figuring out what some of the problems that are happening in the organization and really leveraging your network. It's not all online. It
Yeah.
really, yeah, yeah.
Well, and for the safety industry, there are some pretty big differences, between industries, right? Construction, versus manufacturing,
Yeah.
oil and gas, So do you suggest people try to figure out what industry might be the best fit, or is it more of a role-based fit?
Yeah, you know what? The industries can change. I would look at the role and how you're going to be able to show up in the role first, right? Like the industries, they can change.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're still going to be doing the same things within the organization for the most part. You'll just adapt based on the industries. But you want to look at things that are growth oriented, that are going to be like, what are the trends, so that you're not, all right, like 6 months from now, okay, the industry is going to collapse and there's going to be nothing there for you. But that shouldn't matter. It really should be about how you're going to show up at work. What are you going to be able to do? What problems that they have? What can you solve? How you can add value? How you can help them move forward with their objectives? Are they in line with what you bring to the table and where you want to go with your career? And go from there. It's like dating. It's like matching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've kind of been focusing a little bit on, bigger, better, upward movement. Um, but do you ever see situations where somebody's like, you know what, I've been in these senior roles, I've had all these responsibilities, I've been making pretty good money, but I'd really like to have a better quality of life overall and spend more time with friends or family, or work from home. Do you see kind of the reverse career
Yeah.
movement?
Yeah, especially during COVID, like people were like, "I'm working so much." Now I started you start second guessing everything, right? Now my priorities have shifted. Like I didn't really get to spend that much time with my kids. Now I realize I didn't get to spend that much time with them. So now, like, I don't want to go back. Like these are some of the epiphanies that people have in their career, and that's fine too. You reshift. A lot of them can be conversations that you can have within the organizations. Luckily, with AI, and I mean, you don't want to go in and recommend that everything should be automated by a computer. That's not really great career planning. But you can also, delegate some of your tasks as well. That's another thing to really look into. I find a lot of times when people want to downshift their career, it's a lot of it's just taking the control back away as well. Like you can delegate, you can share some of the responsibilities within the organization without even taking a step back. Give somebody
Right.
else a chance to step forward and lead. You don't always have to be right in front to lead. You can also be in the back as
Yeah.
well. And when people realize that, they're like, oh, I didn't have to give up my whole career because I don't want to work until 9:30 every single night. Like there are other people who are looking for opportunities within the organization, and you can shift some of those priorities easily by looking at, the outcomes that you want to have within the organization and what you can bring to the table as an employee as well, right? So
Yeah.
everything's always going to start with looking within your soul. I'm telling you, the answer is always within. If you
Right.
really have an understanding, do I really want to give up my, you know, $150,000 job as a director because I don't want to work until like late every single night? But there's somebody in your office that really wants to be promoted. Now maybe you can give them this account and renege things. You're still in charge, you're still leading, but you don't have that response. You're not, it's not leaning into your work-life balance. You can change those things. You can be very strategic and still get the same results without having to be so hands-on.
Right.
Right.
One of the, and I think we may, it's been a few years, but I think we may have even touched on too, like I know with at the early onset of COVID and how everything changed,
Mhm.
and I think, how am I going to frame this properly, concisely, but there was a lot of opportunity in the safety industry for consultants.
Right.
I think there continues to be, construction background, and big construction projects will spin up and they'll need to hire, people as consultants or contractors to come in and help. And I think that there's safety is one of those industries that lends itself towards consulting. Small,
Yep.
medium-sized organizations can't afford full-time, or it's project-based, or the work moves around. Do you help people transition into having their own business, their own consultant practice
Yeah, for
as well?
sure. Even coming from the recruitment world as well, right? Like
Right.
that's the other thing to think about as well. Like if you're shifting because you feel like, okay, within the organization, I'm taking on all these hats, you can also just create one hat and go to different organizations and make a lot more money doing it that way. Have people within your like subcontract. Recruitment is very similar in that aspect, right? You know, I've known recruiters that within their organization, their stats are 3 times more than what my personal stats are as when I was recruiting. And I'm going to make 5, 6 times more than they would, right? So it's just about looking at things differently from different perspectives as well, right?
Right.
We're so conditioned to think that work has to be traditional. Like my
Right.
mom went to an office every single day, so now I have to go through an there's gonna be a time where people, mark my words, where people are gonna laugh and be like, "Do you remember that we get paid by the hour?" And they'll be like, "No, no way." You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can imagine how things are done. I mean,
Yeah.
there are organizations that are craving solutions and they just don't know where and how to find them. But again, when you understand what you can do for organizations and you can articulate that, then that's an easy package to market to a whole bunch of small businesses that can become a lucrative consultancy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think safety in particular, and I'm not sure what what you're seeing now, 3 years after our kind of initial conversation, but there's so many areas to specialize in. There's so many areas that organizations need help with,
Mhm.
that there's always a lot of risk involved, and I always kind of suggest that you either kind of have that consultancy tendency, or you don't. If you love
Yeah.
networking, if you love putting yourself out there,
Mhm.
if you love kind of that dating analogy of
Yeah.
meeting new people and building new relationships, then it can be really fulfilling.
Mhm.
And I think the safety industry right now is underemployed.
Mhm.
Companies, like I say, are struggling to find good people, and make sure they're compliant, make sure they're keeping workers safe. And so
Mhm.
a great time to consider that avenue as well,
Yeah.
if it's a fit, like you say, if you look inside, and
Yeah.
you're honest with yourself, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who try it that probably aren't necessarily cut out for it.
Exactly. Yeah, you really have to understand your management style. If you're somebody who's like even going on a job search is like nerve-wracking and you can't do that a lot, that's what you'll be doing every time when you're in a consultancy. Like, that's what it is,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you got to really have an understanding. of that. But if listen, a lot of people from health and safety come from sales backgrounds. And
Yeah.
then start realizing, like, wait a second, I could sell this to so many other organizations, and because and be able to do a fractional consultancy, right? And be able to do this for 10, 15 companies at the same time is nothing, and make X amount of money, and go out and do and crush it. I've seen that so many times in that world, right? Of just
Right.
people who just killing it, because it's intangible, right? Like, what are you're not selling. It's like it's kind of similar to recruitment, right? Like, what are you
Yeah.
selling? I don't
Yeah.
have anything tangible that I'm going to be giving, right?
Right.
So yeah, it can definitely be lucrative, but you got to really understand what, uh, um, how to do that, and make it work for you.
Yeah. So we're coming up close to time. I mean, there's been a lot of great advice. Is there any parting words of wisdom, kind of to,
Um,
summarize what we're talking about?
Yeah, I would say if I could leave you guys with anything, is before you start any search and understanding your value, really start within. Take a moment to really understand what you're looking for, to know where you are, and then write out your goals. Look at people who are doing what you want to do, model that success, reach out to people. Your network is your net worth. Can't tell you how many times how it just makes your life so much easier when you have people in your corner that are rooting for you. And there are. You'll be that person for other people as well, right? But understand your values, what you want, and just take control over your career. Go out and get it.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think that again, a lot of people feel stuck, right? And you really should recognize it's within you. You have the power to be the catalyst for those changes,
Mhm.
and feeling stuck is one of the worst places to be, I think, from a career perspective.
Yeah, from anything. When you feel stuck, you just can't. But the thing is, you just got to keep moving. You just
Yeah,
have to keep moving.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Couldn't think of a better way to kick off 2024, and with our new focus of investing in yourself first. I think any investment you make in yourself is always worthwhile, and you'll always learn and grow from it. So really appreciate you coming on today, providing some advice. I'll definitely suggest, and this is totally ad hoc. I'm just throwing it out there, but I'm sure there's going to be people who listen in and like, oh man, I'd like to talk to Alison about what a career coach is like, but I don't necessarily want to sign up for sure. I
Yeah.
want to learn a little bit about this process first. So um, we'll have your LinkedIn, we'll have your email, so people can connect. But can people feel comfortable, giving you a call just to get a feel for what kind of services and assistance you kind of help people with?
Yeah, for sure. We're coming up with a whole bunch of new exciting projects that are coming up in the first quarter. So we're doing digital programs. We're looking for beta testers for some of our digital programs that we'll be putting out there. We do discovery calls. We have a whole bunch of different things that can help people, just at least have some movement if you're not ready to, go on one-on-one coaching. Maybe it's you just need a resume or a critique of a resume. So for sure, feel free to reach out to me in social media, online. Look out for some of our programs that we are going to be offering. Join our emails, and connect with me.
Yeah, that's great. Because like you said, I mean, you've talked to thousands of organizations and thousands of individuals, and I know you just have a wealth of knowledge and breadth of experience that can even help people think about things that they may not have even been considering, on their own. So I would definitely encourage everybody to reach out to Allison and at least have that discovery call and see if she can help you out. I'd also recommend, and you touched on it, the safety people are very generous, I think, with their time. They're always happy to help support, people that maybe are aspiring to get to where they are, or just want to understand an industry or an organization better. I know we launched the Safeopedia community last year at Safety Connect, and when someone in the community asks for help, you know, there's so many people who just jump in as quick as they can to help support or guide, or at least point the person in the right direction. So definitely, like you say, your network is your net worth, and safety, they, you know, love connecting and supporting each other. So definitely reach out to your peers. Like you say, success leaves traces, right?
Yes.
And breadcrumbs. So definitely connect with your peers. So I want to thank you so much. Like I said, couldn't think of a better way to kick off 2024. And we'll have Alison's coordinates below the video, and definitely reach out.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.